everybody for taking the time. Appreciate it. We're going to go through the theory of change, and then we're also going to spend some time with Justin Fogerty and Erika on Talk a Mile program out of Portland, Oregon, one of our new sites. We also want to welcome Cheryl, who's also one of our new sites from Schenectady, New York. Just a couple of announcements at the beginning. I appreciate all of you getting the data to Daryl. We are filing these reports with Walmart or doing monthly presentations to the foundation board. These numbers are important to them. And so we're going to be a little bit of a pest on getting those in so that as they review our program going into year 2 and 3, we have the chance for more money to support these projects. So helping us get that in will help you ultimately. Also, just a couple of things. We are in discussion about possibly bringing on 21 more new sites out of New York. And also, we have a couple of other sites that we're in negotiations with that would come on. Our grant allowed us to bring on 10 new sites, and the possibility of funding for those sites and expanded funding going into 2025. And so we're working on those projects as we speak. But I appreciate your response when we send out a call for information or data, and we want to keep apprised. We're going to be putting out a newsletter at the end of this month that goes to our National Advisory Board, and John Brisbane, who is also the co-founder of Act Now. So we're excited about where we're going and how this is developing, and the reports that you're sending to us are really encouraging around the youth deflection programs. Because the 3 pillars of this project, which are listening sessions, as well as the Breaking Bread events, which we want to work with you to continue to do those. Those are really been powerful events, and those communities have been able to hold them in Oklahoma City, Nashville, and others that Martin County that have been able to do Breaking Bread. And the third is the data collection and data analysis. And QSI's been working with us on how to collect that data and how to use that data. Walmart's particularly interested on evidence-based or data-driven decision-making, particularly as it involves youth. And so keep youth at the forefront of everything that you're doing in this project. So, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin. Is that correct? We're going to Justin next, Tanner. So Justin Fogerty and his wife Erika have put together Talk a Mile. We went out to Portland to see this relationship between young people and law enforcement, particularly recruits who are in the academy, and the dialogue and the conversation that takes place to enhance and better understanding. They're great community organizers. It's fun to be around them, to hear their story and to hear their voice in this work. And I'm going to turn it over to Justin, and he's going to give a presentation on Talk a Mile. I think this is a program that could be easily replicated. And Talk a Mile is willing to help us think that through and how to do that. And Justin will talk about they're already expanding to Denver and to Seattle, I believe, and possibly some other sites. But this would be a great project or an activity to really engage youth. And it certainly feeds into the deflection model that we're talking about. So, Justin, anything you want to add to your introduction, feel free to do so. I'm going to turn it over to you and to Erika. Okay?
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody being here and making the time. So I'm Justin. As you see, my wife Erika's here as well. We're in different. I happen to be up in Seattle actually for a couple days. Headed back to Portland later today, but coming to you from there while Erika is in Portland. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can go through the slides. Everybody see those? All right. Great. So we started this organization in 2020. Erika, myself, our son Liam, and my brother Sean. And I'll get into a little bit about the hows and the whys and kind of where we are at this point. And then really looking forward to taking some questions and talking through things after we wrap up here with a few slides. So a little bit about Portland, some of the data about it. It is widely known, and people remind us of this constantly, that it is the whitest major city in America. In total, the Black population of the city is about 7.9%, and that includes in the demographic data not only the people that check the Black box within that the census data, but also additional ethnicities and races. So that's kind of the large bucket of the way that you would look at the Black population of the city. But I think it's really important to keep in mind that 7.9% is actually, it's a pretty significant number. It's 51,816 Black Portlanders. So that's sometimes lost in that narrative of it's a really white city when you kind of don't really take into account, well, okay, but what does that actually mean? So I think it's something important to keep in mind. As far as narratives about Portland go, I think you're probably all familiar with what we've heard about Portland in the last few years. When we started the organization in 2020, all the way up through today, a lot of what you see about the city is kind of pointed at these things that are obviously negatives when you're describing a place: anarchy, chaos, violence, total lawlessness, carnage, all sorts of things. This is actually some of the words that I had ChatGPT pull from Fox News headlines over the last couple of years about Portland. So kind of a word cloud of that. And I don't think Fox is unique in this. I'm not trying to pick on them or anything either. But that's sort of been the narrative, and it's sort of what we've been through our work, hopefully trying to change those things, because I don't think those narratives are always correct. It's also an important data point, I think, that out of the 50 largest cities in the US, we are 48th in terms of the ratio of the population to the number of police officers that we have, which is, the data's way of saying that our police bureau is very, very understaffed. And I can attest to this personally from doing a ride along last year, just very, very understaffed, which makes it really difficult for the police to actually try to do any of the kind of community engagement work that the city does say that they do want, that the population says that they do want. And kind of to that point, the city itself, the population is very, very interested in police accountability. And in fact, voted through a police accountability commission a couple of years ago at 82%. So that does sort of tell you a little bit about, I think, from the data, what our city looks like, and kind of the forces, the prevailing narratives, and the things that we're kind of up against, or that we're trying to figure out, how to tease these out and how to make them turn them more into the positive, and really try to change some of these narratives. So the key challenges that we face in the community, trust in the police is a huge one. As you see, 82% voting for a police accountability commission. That really does speak to things. I think it's quite clear living in the city that there is quite a bit of tension, and quite a bit of tension between the police, and just a kind of a lack of trust from the community oftentimes to the police. But then that doesn't exactly manifest itself sometimes in positive ways to overcome that. And in our minds, there's simply not enough conversation. As you've probably seen from the headlines or the news clips and things too, conversation might be a generous way of describing the way that this goes. Sometimes it's kind of loud. It's a lot of screaming. It's a lot of it's a lot of tension there, but not necessarily a whole lot of listening. Not necessarily a whole lot of engagement, which we feel like is a huge opportunity. And on top of that too, I think this is something that I think a dynamic that we see is, even when there are conversations, who's invited to those conversations? Is it the right folks that are actually invited to these conversations, the one that might have the most to gain or lose, or might have the most ideas or anything about them? So again, somewhere where we're trying to make an impact. And then finally, a challenge for us is, I suspect this is probably the case everywhere, civic engagement is difficult, especially when we're talking about young people. Oftentimes the organizations, be they nonprofits, businesses, or government entities, have a hard time figuring out how to even connect with those young people and pull them in and try to get them engaged. Which we think is a real opportunity if we can crack that code. And again, that's something we're trying to do through our work. So where are we in the journey at this point? We put ourselves kind of in this organized section of it. We have really started to do some of the listening. We've started to bring people together. We've started to have these conversations, and we've tried to collect as much data as we can about the impact of those, and the kinds of conversations and the kind of things that people want to be able to talk about to try to get through and have better relationships and better trust. But we know that we've got a long ways to go. We've approached this right from the beginning, both as people that have spent some time in startups, as kind of a startup. right? A startup in this world or in this space. But we know that we are very early in the journey, but we're learning a lot. We're trying to make trying to do the best that we can to try to work with everything we can, take advantage of every opportunity to bring other people into these conversations too, and really kind of learn and pivot and make adjustments to the programming and the way that we approach things and the impact that we can have in the community. Okay, so what do we do? Well, our work actually connects some of these young leaders with local police trainees, and they do literally walk and talk together. They have a one-on-one conversation over the course of a mile. And I'm going to share a few of the stats that we're seeing from the data, and we can take it to the questions after that. But one of the things that we're really proud of, I think, at this point is since our first Talk a Mile that we had in April of 2022, every single new officer in the Portland Police Bureau has been through the program. So that's all the cohorts that go through what in Portland is called Advanced Academy. Advanced Academy is that stage of the police training when they come back to Portland from the state academy where they do basic. But this is something, again, that we're really proud of and trying to build off of to expand to other areas in the Portland metro, as well as Jim mentioned, Denver and potentially Seattle and some other cities too. Okay, one of the questions that we asked through our survey data is, did people feel like they were seen and heard through the experience? And really happy to say that we're at 98% on that. And that's both from the law enforcement side as well as from the students and community members who have participated too, which we just think is a really important metric to keep track of. And I think equally as important, especially when it comes to the young people who participate in this program entirely voluntarily, would they recommend it to a peer? Circling back to the, who's invited to these conversations, and that idea of community engagement or civic engagement for young people, we think that these seen and heard and would recommend to a peer are data points that really do speak to that impact and really do speak to that there is a hunger for this. There's a hunger for it from these young folks who actually do really want to get engaged in these conversations around community. And they embrace this opportunity to do so, and they would recommend it to other peers of theirs as well. But data is great, but I know oftentimes participant quotes and some of the testimonials and things, some of the takeaways and learnings are even more important. So I'll give you a second to take this one in. And we've got another one here from a student leader that I'll give you a second to read as well. Oh, a little context on this photo too. This was an event that we did at a Blazer game last year where we invited past participants as well as some civic leaders. That tall, handsome gentleman on the right is Liam, and you see Erika over here as well. But they're speaking with the Assistant Chief of Police, Chuck Lavelle, who was actually the Chief of Police, but then resigned from being Chief to take on a community engagement role. So he's been a great champion for us and is actually featured in this next photo, participating in Talk a Mile himself, where he was walking and talking with a young student, Emma Daniels, who's actually just started her first year at Penn. This was one of our favorite quotes that we've received through the work so far. This was from the survey for the very first Talk a Mile we did in April of 2022. And as all of you know, with your program, when you first get to take it out into the world, it's a super exciting but scary day, right? What is going to happen? How is this going to go? And we definitely were going through all those emotions and just making sure that everybody had a positive experience and that was impactful. So obviously later that day, when we start digging into survey data and see something like this, we thought, maybe we're onto something. And just definitely helps inspire us to keep going with the work. So that's all I've got in terms of the slides. Happy to jump into questions, any of the questions you got for myself or for Erika. Jim, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry.
No
Justin, I probably should have mentioned this. I may have mentioned it sooner, but in Seattle, the acting chief of police, Sue Rohr, is on our national advisory board and was on the President's Task Force for 21st Century Policing, which we facilitated, and a very close friend. If you need me to do any introductions, you may have already done it, but I just wanted to.
I haven't connected at that level, so I would definitely like to take you up on that, Jim.
Okay, we'll talk.
Yeah. I think we're engaged with some of the right folks there, but it's always good to keep connecting up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just going to jump in again, just such a, joy to be here, seeing faces, being a part of the Act Now community. For me, what was most meaningful about forming Talk a Mile is just, on the heels of the summer of 2020, again, Portland made the news headlines for just the continuing protests, but that really just showed the degree of activism, especially among youth. And, for many of them, it was their first time participating in a protest, their first time using their voices for social change, but a lot of us were just wondering, what's next. And so Talk Mile really was that opportunity to translate that activism into action and to show that, the momentum can continue. It just takes ongoing conversation so that, these voices, especially youth voices, can continue to be heard. And again, we do focus primarily on Black and now also Latino students as well. So just a really great opportunity to keep that momentum going.
Any questions for Justin? We'll post the slides and his contact information for any of you who may want to look at replicating the project. And it's pretty straightforward. And the facilitation, they develop facilitation questions that are actually used by the academy and by the student participants. So this isn't just a wide open conversation, it's a guided conversation.
Yeah, we're actually integrated into their trainings, especially for, again, the recent academy graduates. So that it's about 2 weeks before they officially join the force. They have a week where they kind of wrap up their trainings. And so, yeah, every new cadet does a Talk a Mile event.
Good.
But yes, please reach out. We'd love to connect with you all and just continue to learn from you, everyone.
We're excited to have you with us.
Yeah, very much so.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the time. Yeah, as Erika said, please reach out. Happy to talk more.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there are no questions at this time. I'm going to turn it over to Tanner and Shelly to talk about the theory of change. These are really important as we are finalizing. I feel like we owe you an apology, or an explanation for some of the grants been slow to come as we work with Rockefeller, who is our funding sponsor. The grant from Walmart goes through Rockefeller to us and then to the sites, and they're directly contracting with you. And it's been slower than we had hoped, but it's coming. We've been assured. And they have the requirements for the grant application to be sure that we've got the right kind of content that meets what we've said we're going to do with Walmart. So it's been a process, but thank you for your patience. So Shelly, I'm going to turn it over to you, and
Okay.
You can take it from here.
All right, let me share my screen. All right, are you able to see my screen?
Could be bigger. There we go. There we go.
There we go. Better. All right, well, I'm happy to have you all here. Welcome, Talk a Mile, Walk a Mile, Talk a Mile. I'm so excited for you guys to learn from you and to bring you in to learn from this wonderful community. We're really fortunate that there's just a lot of passion and energy, and we're so thrilled to have you with us. Right now, what we're going to talk about, Jim mentioned, how do we, the intent behind what we're doing is to help all of us focus on, now that once we have a good understanding of what the challenges are in our community, how do we act? What are we going to do? And a theory of change is an incredibly useful tool for any organization who's looking to sort of take all of our understanding and turn that into activities and outcomes and real impact. So every grantee will be asked to complete this theory of change process. I have a timeline, and we'll do it. We're going to do it. We want to have these ready by November 1st. So there's quite a bit of activity we're excited to do with you. And we're going to talk a little bit about what is a theory of change, how it will help, why it will help, and then how we're going to put it together and what that's going to look like here. And Jim or Colleen or Tanner, did you have any other sort of founding conversation thoughts around why we're doing this that you'd like to share?
Shelly, I would just add that it really will also help QSide, who's working with us on the local data use, because the data will come alongside your theory of change to help in measuring those things that are going to matter to get at your impact.
Absolutely. And you'll see we've got some language in here around outcomes that will be directly connected to the work that you've all been doing with QSide over the summer. Okay, thank you. All right, so this timeline kind of helps us see where are we in the process. And when it comes to like where we are as kind of an organization, everyone's a little bit along this spectrum, but this activity of theory of change development really kind of sits in this organize as we prepare to act. What is it that we can do? So this is, you'll see this illustration again and again, especially when we have other sites join, because we're all kind of at different spots. But this is where we are. This is an activity that allows us to truly link our efforts to outcomes and impact. So we're excited to be where we are. Okay, this is a question, and I am going to ask you all to actively use the chat. So open it up if you haven't already done so. So click that open and maybe just put a little hi, this is Shelly, tell us where you are, something in the chat. So you can see. So what is a theory of change? A theory of change is a map of how the work that we do is going to lead to impact that includes the building blocks that are necessary in order to do that. So I have a question for you. What is your experience with the theory of change? Have you had some of you may have had an opportunity to build one of these or to work with one of these. If you can just take a minute and in the chat, just let us know what your experience is with the theory of change. Oh, I love to see. Hi, Kit in Ann Arbor, Tyrone, happy to have you here. Hi, Jude. I love seeing everyone popping into the chat. And as we're typing, is there anyone who would be open to sharing your experience with the theory of change? Colleen, would you mind sharing your thoughts around how you've seen these be useful in the past or what your experience is?
Sure. I do a lot of grant writing, and many grants require you to provide a theory of change because the rest of everything you write about flows from what your assumptions are. So the theory of change sort of capsulizes how you're defining what it is that you're addressing and how you're going to, what your assumptions are about that. So it focuses and clarifies what the what is, and makes sure that everybody's on the same page. And then from that should flow decisions that we make about, okay, if we think this, then this is going to happen. If we do this, this is going to happen. Then your strategies and activities flow from that. Great.
Thank you, Colleen. And thanks, Jude and Cheryl. I love your note in the chat. I'm new and paying attention. We're so glad you're here. We're excited. All right. Well, I can tell you my experience with the theory of change has been this is a tool. Think of it as a planning exercise and a strategy exercise that has the most potential, in my experience, to help bootstrap action and activity and really help us truly focus and connect our activities with our intended outcome. So I love this as a useful tool. What you will see, what we've put together, there are many, many ways to approach a theory of change. There are as many ways to illustrate it as there are organizations. We have worked really hard to streamline it as much as possible so that it will be the most useful for you with but won't require as much effort. So some theory of change exercises, I've seen them go 2-3 years, but we're not going to do that. We're gonna do the most important part of it. That's what how you'll see this adapted. So if you've done it in the past and it seemed a little different, that's normal. Our goal is to make this experience as good as possible for you. And also, as you go through this experience with Act Now, these are tools that you can use in other efforts that you have. It's actually a useful experience and process to do almost anytime you're developing a new program. So this is meant to be here. Let's do this for our existing grant funding, but also use this. This is a tool for you to continue to do the good work that you do beyond here and now. Thank you. Any other thoughts about your experience with the theory of change?
Shelly, this is Jude. I'll just say very quickly, hi, everyone. We're really, for those who we haven't met, we're super excited to get to know you. For me, like, for what we do with the data side of things, it's so important to have a really well-developed theory of change, because it helps us frequently on the data side. What we end up finding is that we use sort of data in this opportunistic way where we're like, well, we have this data, let's do something with it. But I think if we have a really well-developed theory of change, it helps folks who have our sort of skill set to really understand how to find and help you use data that's actually meaningful, not just happens to be available. So I'm really excited that we're on this journey together.
So excited. And Jude and your teams of like, we're really looking forward to seeing how this all meshes together, because it's all one work. And you will see, all of you, that this complements the work you've already been doing with QSide. And you should be able to sort of you'll already have some work done to fill in your worksheet for a theory of change. So thank you. Thank you, Jude. We're really excited. Okay, so what are the elements of a theory of change? I'm going to very briefly sort of touch on each of these, but we've built a course for you that goes into each of these more deeply. So don't feel like you have to understand everything right now. What we're doing right now is I'm just giving you a quick overview and sort of a framework that you can hang your understanding on as you do go through the course. So what are the elements of a theory of change? First, we need to know who our audience is. And that includes a community description that includes what we understand about the local data around what's happening in your site. It includes who your community is. It includes what you've learned in your listening sessions already. So who is this that we are supporting, and who's your audience? That's the first step always. And then we move into what challenges are they encountering? And a problem statement, it's one of my favorite parts of a theory of change. You might find out this. I love it because we write that problem from the perspective of the end user in a manner that if you hailed it and handed it to an end user, to one of your audience members, which I recommend you doing, they should be able to look at that and go, yep, that feels like my experience. So what is the challenge? What is the problem that we are looking at? One of the things that is so glorious about the Act Now, Jen mentioned the 3 pillars, is this organization is incredibly good at listening and understanding and taking in what people are saying. But now what do we do with that? How do we focus that? If we are listening, sometimes that can become overwhelming, especially if you're listening to all the challenges that come to a community. So the problem statement is a focus exercise to help us take all of that we know about the community and focus on what piece we feel like where we can really help. Next, after that, we identify what are the evidence-based practices, what are the innovation practices that will help us get there. And we have we have some that Act Now as an organization sort of founds on, but you will find, we were working with John with Oklahoma City, and one of their biggest focus is truancy rates. So how do they, how can they help decrease truancy rates? So there is research-based evidence on programs to help with alleviate truancy. So what does that look like? So we're always looking for not only do we hear from our audience? What do we learn? But what is there in the world that is a best practice that we can build off of? That's very important in a theory of change, because what we're saying through a theory of change is, I'm going to do this because I have evidence that it's going to work. So that's an important part of how we decide what we're even going to do. Next, there is a summary statement, and you'll learn more about that. But I like to just use a model of, if we do this, then this will happen because of this. If, then, because. This is an exercise that I have always found is really helpful to sort of focus and say, why am I choosing the interventions I'm choosing? Why are we doing these activities? Well, if we do this, then this will happen. And this is the evidence that we have that is the case. Does it always work out that way? Absolutely not, because we're humans and these are really tricky, sticky problems that we're trying to help with. But doing that, providing that that thought and pulling it all the way through is incredibly helpful, and making sure that the programs that we're doing are actually truly targeted at the challenges that we're looking to address. 5 is around inputs, and that is, what are all of the things that need to come together in order to make this work? So that's things like funding, that's things like staff support, that's things like stakeholder engagement and alignment, and there is a lot that Act Now provides for you, and we'll share those with you. But there's also other resources or inputs that are going to be necessary in order to truly make the solutions work. Next are, what are the activities and outcomes? This is where the rubber hits the road. What are we actually going to do? Very clearly, we're going to do these 3 activities, and here are the outcomes that we expect out of those activities. Those outcomes are not necessarily impact. You may have some short-term outcomes that are more like guiding you towards your true impact. But we want to be really clear about what are those things that we're doing and what do we expect to happen as an outcome based on those activities. And then finally, at this point in the process, we have what we're calling an anticipated impact statement, which is sort of from your heart. What is the change you are hoping to drive? And after we've been working together, and we'll be talking about what does it look like a year from now, but that anticipated impact will turn into your actual impact. What was the impact that you were able to make? Any thoughts or questions around these elements of a theory of change? Okay, great. That, like I said, we have a course that I'll share with you, and you're going to get to know this stuff inside and out. This is just an example of what the output might look like. So there are multiple ways, like I said, to illustrate a theory of change. It typically looks sort of like this, like a map. We have a template that we've put together that we will help you create, so that what your end output will look like is, you'll have essentially a 2-page document that you can use to communicate with funders, to communicate with stakeholders, potential partners, your staff, your volunteers, to help everyone kind of understand. It's also think of it as a communication tool as well, to understand, what is it you're doing? What are we about? And how are we going to make the impact that we do? And it's quite extraordinary, I think, when everyone on your team, everyone who's in your circle, is all aligned and focused on driving the change. And this is a tool that will allow you to sort of galvanize that kind of support and get people connected to the work that you're doing in a really meaningful and helpful way. Okay, this is another chat exercise, so get your fingers ready. How can this be helpful for you? I've put some ideas down here, but I'm going to ask everyone to try and pull up, like, what would this do for you? How might this be useful for you? As I'm talking through these points, I'd love to have you adding your thoughts in the chat. First of all, this is, and Jim's talked about our timeline for the granting process, but like as new sites come in, this will be the first thing they do in preparation for that grant proposal, because once we have this theory of change, we have a really clear understanding of what needs to be done and what needs to be funded. So it's a really useful tool to get some traction on there. So if you're having some struggle or feeling frustrated not getting traction on that, this exercise will help you for sure. And it will also be helpful for other potential funding that you're looking for. Next, it helps to clarify your vision and strategy. Everyone gets a chance to see what is it that we are doing. Everyone on your team can catch the vision, can understand their part, and start contributing. So it's a really helpful way to help clarify that vision. Measuring progress and impact. We need to know upfront what impact we're even trying to make. Like, how do we know? Like, what measures do we have? And this is a lot of the work that I know you all have already done with QSide. So how do we help understand where we are now, see our intervention, and then see if have we improved? Did we make a difference? This really helps lay the foundation for that. Enhancing effectiveness is about, let's all make sure that all of the activities that we are doing directly tie to the impact we're trying to make. So because and we are all problem solvers in this space, and we might see a challenge and start a program to address it. And it's very, very easy in this space to quickly get diluted with what it is that we're trying to do, because we're trying to help all the things and address all the problems, and that can impact our effectiveness. So having a clear understanding of, here are the things that we're doing and here's why, that always helps to boost effectiveness in the organization. Strengthening communication. This is one of the things I really love most about these is, and I mentioned this earlier, is the ability to communicate what it is we're about, what it is we're doing. You can use this as a framework for updates. You know, these are the activities, these are the outcomes we had hoped for. We blew those outcomes away, or we're struggling a little. You know, it's such a useful way to communicate internally with your team, but also externally with stakeholders and funders. And finally, accountability. This is super transparent. We are saying, here is what we're doing. We're being super open and clear about it. And that's particularly important when you're dealing with vulnerable populations, which we've talked about in the past, because there's a very important element of trust building that transparency is often the only thing that will help with. So this is another tool to be transparent and accountable, and to find ways to ensure that the community and our audience is aware of what we're doing and aligned with what we're doing, or can provide us with suggestions or opportunities to improve our offerings. So I noticed a couple of really wonderful ideas. Tyrone, I wonder if would you mind sharing with us your thoughts? I like your comment in the chat.
Yeah, I can briefly I think the theory of change is really helpful for connecting things that maybe to funders or even, to people outside of your organization don't seem connected. But as a lot of to sort of make meaningful change often requires a more holistic vision, so I think that the theory of change is a really helpful tool in both for the organization and then communicating that these more holistic approaches and tying together these sort of seemingly disparate pieces.
Thank you so much for sharing and being willing to be to share your ideas with us. Any other thoughts? Okay. So here are the tools that we have put together that are available for you. First, we have a course that I'm going to show you. I'm going to do a little walkthrough that will teach you much more about each of those elements. As you are doing the course, you'll hear me call it's the course and the worksheet. The worksheet goes along with the course, and as you're doing the course, you're going to take that worksheet and you're going to start building this for your organization. So that they're built to go together to help you as you are developing your understanding of a theory of change, but also clarifying your thoughts. So we have the course, we have the worksheet, and then you have me to help you. And also, when you get me, you get Tucker, who's an extra special addition, I think, to any effort. But I will be helping you to evolve. We're going to take the course, complete the worksheet, then you and I will meet and we'll do a consultation and I will help you. And Jude and your team, we might tap on your shoulder at that point also, especially around the outcomes, to help evolve that and get it in really good shape. Then you will take your draft and share with your Justice Circle. Get aligned, make sure everyone is, all of your stakeholders are on board. We expect that there will be changes and evolution after you have that conversation. Get those changes back to me, and then I will develop for you a final version that you can consider like your publishable version that you can share. So these are tools that are available, and I am going to quickly pop out. Well, in a minute, I'll pop out and we will look at the course together. Here is, and I'll ask you to screenshot this or get familiar with this, especially these dates. So these dates will help you as you are looking at developing this theory of change so that we can get it all completed and done by November 1st. Is the goal. I've done an estimate of the amount of time it might take to do the work. The course itself is not going to take a lot of time. What will take more time is your thinking and your working through the worksheet. So start with the course. Our recommendation is that you finish that by September 30th, by the end of this month. And then hold a consultation with me. I will give you, and we're going to do this today, we're actually going to set up our appointments, a time for you and I to meet by October 3rd. Then you'll have a couple of weeks where we are going to recommend that you take it back to your Justice Circle, have the conversations, do the aligning, make the changes, and then get that back to me. And then it'll take me a couple of weeks to get those all processed into something that can be published for you. Once that's done, then you can share it with all of your people. Share it with the people that you're trying, new partners, share it with your funders. If you haven't completed your grant proposal, it will be incredibly helpful for you to include particularly the activities outcomes will be helpful for you. And we'll be happy. Tanner and I both will be happy to meet with, if you want to bring us along to a Justice Circle conversation to help introduce it or do some, provide some thinking or support around that. We're happy to help. We do recommend everyone, all of our site coordinators, we're anticipating you will complete the course, and we strongly recommend you inviting your Justice Circle members to complete the course as well. Doing that will help that alignment conversation move a lot more smoothly. You'll find that once people are really familiar with the concept, when you get to that alignment conversation, you're really talking about your programs and activities, not necessarily having to teach people the framework that you're working in. So we strongly recommend you're inviting your Justice Circle members to complete the course as well. Questions or thoughts on the timeline? Okay. When I hear that, do you know, I hear everyone go, "That's awesome, Shelly. I'm totally going to hit those times. It's going to be great." So thank you for providing that affirmation for me. Okay, so next up here is, and I'm going to put these, let me see if I can exit full screen. I'm going to throw these in the chat. We are going to get into the course, first of all, and make sure everyone has access. I'm going to put this in the chat.
Hey, Shelly, can I just make a comment real quick?
Please.
While you're getting ready to do that. So Shelly and I had the opportunity to go through this process with John Middendorf, who is the site coordinator for the Oklahoma City Justice Circle. And he helped us refine and work through it. But he went through the process exactly the same way that you're about to go through this process. And it was just a really interesting experience to watch him. He's been doing this type of work for a long time, but specifically breaking bread events and listening sessions for 3 or 4 years now. And what I thought was so interesting is the amount of texture that was gained in, the few hours that we invested together. As he worked through what he had thought he was planning to do, he realized there were a couple of holes that he wanted to fill. I'd ask him to speak to it, but I don't think he's here on the call today. And by the end, he was so excited about what we'd come up with and a couple little adjustments that had been made, because mapping it out and seeing it and kind of thinking through it kind of exposed some of these maybe some opportunities or weaknesses that could be adjusted or worked on. And it was just a really neat experience. So I am expecting to see it will be different for each group based on where you're at and what your activities are and how you're moving forward. But it can be a very like enlightening, and it can bring a lot of passion. So I guess I just wanted to say I'm excited to dive in and kind of see how this works for each of you guys.
Thank you, Tanner, so much. And while you all are accessing that link, you've reminded me, I'm going to show you guys John's. I think he won't mind. He knows. I did, Tanner, you may notice I removed some of the budget numbers from this sample, but this is, I know it's probably quite small. Let me see. Are you still seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is Oklahoma City's draft. They're still sharing it with their Justice Circle, but their draft theory of change. So they have this really wonderful, and this is available to you in the course. So you'll be able to refer back to this and kind of see where you're headed. I have a really good understanding of the problem, some helpful and grounding evidence-based practices. Here is their if then because statement. If our Justice Circle, well, let me start with the problem statement. Remember, a problem statement is understanding the perspective from the end user. I have a hard time getting to school. It just doesn't seem important considering all the other things going on in my life. I have challenges at home. We struggle financially. I have a lot going on. My mom's in jail and I have a lot of responsibilities. When I do go to school, it isn't engaging and I have a hard time focusing. It doesn't always feel safe and I don't want to be there. This is the problem that the Oklahoma City Justice Circle is going to be addressing. Of all of the things that they experienced in their listening sessions, this is the area where they feel like they have the most opportunity to really be supportive. So it's really helpful to crystallize that problem statement. And then I'll share this with you. So I won't read through every piece of it, but I will show you. We have a section on inputs. What are the inputs? Here are the activities that they're going to be doing and their anticipated outcome, and then their anticipated impact narrative. So this is sort of the culmination of what the work we did with John. We also have an appendix that includes their community overview, listening session themes, and local data that's like, here's how we got to this point. But this little 2-page document is what you will end up with that you'll be able to share with your stakeholders. Okay, course. Have you been able to access the course? Raise your hand. We want everyone in there. Yes? Anyone having trouble getting in? Because there's about to be a part 2 to this. Okay, you can see my screen and I'll just quickly overview. There's what is sort of foundational, what is a theory of change, the elements of a theory of change that we just kind of started to go through. These should look familiar to you. And then how to build your own and what that looks like. I'm going to ask you all right now that since you're all in the course, to go to this lesson 2, Act Now, Theories of Change. And when you're there, get to this theory of change worksheet at the base. Can everyone see it? And we're going to open that worksheet up And I'm going to invite you all. It will open up in Google Drive. If you're having trouble with this, you can reach out to me or Tanner afterwards and we'll help you with this. But I'll invite you to make a copy and save it somewhere. I recommend keeping it in Google Drive. That'll be easier for us on Consult, but if that's uncomfortable for you, you can certainly download it onto your desktop and we can deal with it via email. But I recommend using Google Drive. So make a copy. And then to start with, I'm going to have you replace this with your site name. And you'll notice in this worksheet, think of it as the fill in the blank. There are instructions and guides for you as you go throughout this. You will be, when you are in the course, it will give you a cue called worksheet activity that says, hey, go to your worksheet, complete section 3. Okay, go to your worksheet, complete section 2. Is everyone there? Thumbs up if you've been able to get to the course, open the document, and replace your site name. It's extra. Okay. Now that you've got that done, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you all right now to go to my Calendly link. I just put it in the chat and set up a meeting. Set up our consultation. Now, this is a consultation that you are saying by the time we have this meeting, you've completed the course and you've completed your worksheet. So I've given you, my recommendation is to, let's pull up my recommendation is, so we're here on the 10th of September. We want to have this meeting with you and me by the 3rd, maybe the 4th. That's okay. So by this week. So I recommend, I'm happy to meet with you earlier for sure, but just be sure that by the time we've met, you've completed the course and your worksheet. So I recommend looking for a time this week of the last week of September, first week in October. Or I'm happy, like I said, I'm happy to meet with you before then, but just you'll want to make sure that you've completed the worksheet and the course. Okay. Everyone able to do that? Any questions around how to do that? We will also send a follow-up email. Tanner, maybe you can help me with this, with these links in it so that you can get access to the course really easily and get access to schedule the appointment with me. Okay. All right. We've got just a few minutes left for any questions. All right. Well, again, when I hear silence, I hear you go, I understand fully and have it totally under control. Also, here's my email. You can reach out to me directly at any time, of course, if you have questions or if something isn't working, you have one of the forums is acting wonky, I'm happy to help support. Okay. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Shelly. Also, we want to encourage you on these monthly webinars as we present new themes and topics to invite other members of your community or your justice circle to participate. It doesn't have to only be the site director. We think there's a lot of information that your team could benefit from as we go through this process. So we encourage you to do that. The other thing I'm going to ask you, we're going to be putting out a newsletter in a couple of weeks. And if you have a compelling story that you could put in about 500 words or less that describes an interaction or a youth participation or engagement, something that illustrates your program and the impact that you're having, if you'd be willing to share that, we would like to put it in the newsletter so our National Advisory Board could see it and our various funders could also see the story of what you're doing. So be thinking about that. We'll be sending a reminder to you as well. So thank you for your time and your participation. Any questions for us as a whole in terms of Act Now? Great. Well, we hope you have a great week. Thanks for participating. And we'll be back in touch. And Shelly, thank you. And Tanner for putting together this course. And we look forward for the ongoing conversation. Thank you, everyone.